Spoiler alert!
Welcome to Spoiler Alert. Hi, I'm Ryan. I have a lot of records. I am nowhere near as cool as Abigail DeVoe is. Seriously, go subscribe to her channel. And today we are going to talk about Michael, the new biopic directed by Antoine Fuqua and written by John Logan. And let me just start off by saying straight out of the gate, I am a fan of Michael Jackson. There are 5 essential albums that have connected with me since childhood. They are Huey Lewis and the News Sports, Aerosmith, Toys in the Attic, Don Henley, Building the Perfect Beast, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction, and Michael Jackson's Thriller. Those are 5 automatic 10 out of 10 albums for me because those albums have always been there since I was a baby. One of my first memories involving music was reaching up to my parents' turntable and putting on Huey Lewis and the News' Sports by myself. That's how much I love music. It was ingrained in me. So, Michael Jackson's Thriller is a very seminal album to me. It is a part of my musical DNA. And I'm going to say straight up, 100% for the record, Michael Jackson is innocent. I don't believe Michael Jackson did those things, whereas Bill Cosby, Chris Brown, R. Kelly, there was insurmountable proof with those people. And yeah, I had no qualms throwing my Cosby Show DVDs away when he was found guilty. And that was the hardest thing I had to do because I idolized Bill Cosby. I looked up to him. So when I say Michael Jackson is innocent, I sincerely believe it. He was acquitted twice. They found nothing on him. And of course, Wade Robson and James Safechuck are coming out of the woodwork because the Leaving Neverland checks stopped printing. And then you had the Casios coming out. And keep in mind, Wade Robson got a whole ass MTV reality show because of Michael Jackson. And I'm not one to victim blame, but I do not believe the Casios, who, mind you, were infamous in recording the fake Michael Jackson songs on the 2010 posthumous release called Michael. And all this shit that's going on right now to me is unconstitutional. You're digging up a corpse to get more money. And that shit is not cool to me. And while we're also on this topic, fuck pedophiles. I literally cheered when Ian Watkins was killed in prison last year. Because when I found out Ian Watkins raped literal infants, I threw my Lost Prophets CDs away. I became persona non grata to that fucking band. I won't even support the Lost Prophets' new band with the frontman from Thursday. Fuck that. I cannot bring myself to listen to their music ever again. And I find it rather funny that critics have that smoke for Michael, but not Elvis, in which the film literally glosses over his relationship with Priscilla Presley. And also ignored the fact that Elvis groomed her, and he was known to have slumber parties with underage girls. But yet Elvis has a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes and was a Best Picture nominee. And Elvis' sister movie, Epic, Elvis Presley in Concert, which has a neon distribution deal and was released this year, got a 97% critical rating. So when I went to go see Michael, I know you're not supposed to factor in anecdotal elements, but the fact that I saw people decked out in full Michael Jackson garb as I entered my theater is a testament to the fact that that man is innocent. As I was heading to my car when I left the theater, a dude was dressed up as Billie Jean era Michael Jackson doing a moonwalk. I couldn't help but clap. So, the history of this film is it was supposed to come out last year, but they had to reshoot due to the fact that they couldn't legally dramatize the Chandler allegations, which, while we're on that topic, motherfuck Evan Chandler. He's a washed up fucking screenwriter who couldn't cut it in Hollywood, so he pimped out his kid to get more money. Fuck him. And what you gotta realize too about Michael Jackson is Michael Jackson was powerful. He owned the crown jewel of white people music, the Beatles catalog, which, mind you, that is suspiciously missing from this film. Because Paul McCartney has his own hagiography coming out involving the Beatles in 2028. And not only that, he owned a portion of Sony's publishing. Also, he was pro-Palestine before it was cool. There exists a song that he wrote but never recorded about Palestine called Palestine Don't Cry. There's a video I highly recommend checking out. It's Beacon Rewind's video on Vanessa Redgrave that talked about how Vanessa Redgrave being pro-Palestine in the 1970s, after she won an Oscar, made her persona non grata. And then you have Paris Jackson being critical of the film, but it seems as though they kind of reconciled that. Janet Jackson is suspiciously absent from this movie, but that's by choice. As for that ending, they had to reshoot the ending. They paid for that reshoot because it was their error. So, with all that said, I had to tee up my thoughts on Michael Jackson for a reason. Because somebody has to be the bad guy. Walk hard, hard, down life's rocky road. From the producer of Bohemian Rhapsody should have thrown up red flags immediately when you saw that in the trailer. This is a straight hagiography. The thing that frustrates me is that there's a fantastic movie hanging in here about the making of and release of Thriller and the conflict of your father pimping you out at the height of your success, in the vein of A Complete Unknown in Love and Mercy, where you're laser focused on the transition from Off the Wall to Thriller, and that conflict of becoming a global superstar who wants to break on his own. There is an A-plus movie just on that alone. And that's why I don't think doing a cradle to grave biopic works for Michael Jackson. He's too huge of a figure. When you compare this to something like A Complete Unknown, which is laser focused on Bob Dylan going electric, that's a good movie because of that. When you watch Love and Mercy, and it's laser focused on two very specific eras in Brian Wilson's life, when he was making Pet Sounds and Smile, and then the 24/7 care he was under with Eugene Landy, who was taking full advantage of him in his weakened mental state. I found myself watching a video about the JFK Jr. show Love Story, created by Ryan Murphy, which I saw the trailer for it, and it rubbed me the wrong way with the slowed down minor key cover of Tears for Fears Head Over Heels, one of my all-time favorite songs. And this guy used a terminology that perfectly describes why I don't like this movie. He used the term biopic industrial complex, where he talks about how life stories are now practically becoming IPs. Because, let's be real here, people are getting tired of Star Wars, they're getting tired of Marvel. Yeah, there will still be a market for comic book movies and blockbusters, but people want original things. And what's this? We can make more money off musicians by making cradle-to-grave walk-hard biopics about their life? And Michael is a part of that biopic industrial complex he is talking about. Right down to, spoiler alert, the His Story Continues title card at the end of the film. This film made $39.5 on opening day alone. It made $217 million opening weekend, $97 million domestic. And if you like this movie, more power to you. I get why you would like this movie. You want to see the greatest hits. You want to see him do the moonwalk. You want to see him recreate Thriller. I get that. But for me, there's no there. And I'm just going to call it. This will probably either crack $1 billion or get extremely close to it. The sequel is going to be pretty much guaranteed. And going back to what I was saying about the term biopic industrial complex, I don't want to see life stories get franchised. I don't want to see a David Bowie music biopic franchise or the MJCU, the Michael Jackson Cinematic Universe. I don't need to see a story about how Joe Jackson came to life, or a biopic on Tito, or a biopic on LaToya Jackson. And this is why I'm worried about the 4 Beatles biopics being released by Sony. Because I don't want to see a glossy PG-13 version of John, Paul, George, and Ringo's Wikipedia pages with a YouTube playlist of the Red and Blue Greatest Hits albums playing in the background. And I got a feeling those 4 movies are going to be just that. You can practically already predict what songs are going to be featured in those movies. The other thing, too, is Sony really needs a successful franchise because the Sony's universe of Marvel characters crashed and burned, the Spider-Verse movies are about to end. The only thing propping them up franchise-wise is Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies. And oh, what's this? We have the publishing rights to the Beatles' music thanks to Michael Jackson? Quick, find 4 focus group approved English white boys. But John Branca, who Michael Jackson fired multiple times and was rehired 8 days before he died, possibly while high on painkillers, can't sell another Greatest Hits album, nor get Miles Teller to play him if they went the route of the laser focusing on the making of Thriller, which I felt would have been the better movie, instead of just doing this cradle-to-grave walk-hard biopic, because you're talking about a man who has an extremely complicated legacy. Like, doing a cradle-to-grave hagiography on this man's life is not the route. You pick a very specific chapter in his life, and you work with that. And you can still recreate Thriller. You can still recreate him doing the moonwalk at Motown 25. You can still do all that. You can still keep the same cast. And John Branca himself said he wanted an A-lister to play him, and he chose Miles Teller. After the logos show up, which is the Lionsgate logo, the Universal logo, and then Michael Jackson's Vanity logo from the 80s, within the first 10 seconds, I knew I wasn't gonna have a good time with this. It starts off with the cliched shot of Michael Jackson in 1988 at Wembley Stadium thinking about his entire life before he goes on stage. You know, like in Bohemian Rhapsody, where Freddie Mercury thought about his entire life before he went on to crush it at Live Aid, at Wembley Stadium. The alternate opening was also going to be that same walk-hard biopic style, but instead, it would have taken place in 1993 with Michael Jackson staring at the man in the mirror thinking about his life as police sirens shown in the background. Yeah, it still would have been the walk-hard biopic, but it would have added conflict to this film. And I get why they couldn't do that. They couldn't legally talk about the Chandler allegations. After we get Michael Jackson standing there at Wembley Stadium thinking about his life, we hard cut to 1966 in Gary, Indiana, as Michael Jackson looks at kids playing outside. Much like in Walk Hard, Michael Jackson is already a perfect singer. And then we get Joe Jackson, played by Coleman Domingo, beating his ass for not answering him. And in the act of fairness, Coleman Domingo is perfect casting for Joe Jackson, as is Nia Long as Katherine Jackson, and I hope Nia Long gets her money's worth. Because I just read that there's a pay dispute between Nia Long and Lionsgate for the Michael biopic, and it's like, no, you pay her what she's worth. She's fantastic in this movie. Coleman Domingo is able to get that sliminess of Joe Jackson down to a science. As written, he's basically the dad from Walk Hard, but evil. And yes, I will be harping on Walk Hard a lot while talking about this movie. Domingo and Long understood the assignment. They both understood that Joe and Catherine are mirrors of each other. Joe Jackson's the evil taskmaster dad, and Nia Long is the caring, affirming mother. And now we cut to them performing with Gladys Knight and the Pips, and they're covering Stan by Sly and the Family Stone. And now Suzanne DePass discovers the Jackson 5, and we're speed running the Jackson 5's career at Motown to get to Off the Wall. Another good thing about this movie is Lorenz Tate as Berry Gordy. He is fantastic here. He is letter perfect casting for Barry Gordy. He is exactly who I'd cast. And there's a great scene in this film that involves Barry Gordy and young Michael where he's teaching him about mixing. He's sitting at that board showing him faders and everything like that. And the recurring bit of this movie is Michael has to be told to stand still when he sings. And if you see him performing in a if you see him in the studio in any capacity, that's not what happening. That's not what's happening. Like case in point, when he did the "We Are the World" video, and he's like vibing when you're down and out, na 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 na. And then you have Huey Lewis and Cyndi Lauper anally sodomizing their one lines, and Michael Jackson's giving them like this total "I'm going to fucking destroy your career" death stares at both of them. Then we focus on Michael Jackson recording "I Want You Back," and we get that speedrun montage of Jackson 5 with the graphic of "I Want You Back," the throning "Let It Be," speaking of the Beatles. Then we hard cut to 1978. Let's just say this right now. Jafar Jackson is fantastic as Michael Jackson. I would like to see what he could do outside of Michael Jackson. This is his feature film debut, and I'm impressed. Granted, he got this role because of nepotism and connections, but this is more Margaret Qualley and less a Chet Hanks. And granted, it's no Alan Rickman in Die Hard, but it's still a great feature film debut. You can tell he busted his ass to nail every facet of Michael Jackson. You sit here and you watch him, and it's like, okay, I am watching Michael Jackson. He'll probably at most only get nominated for a Golden Globe for this, just so they can have him out there, just so they can have him perform a Michael Jackson tribute. It'll probably be nominated for something like Box Office Achievement at Golden Globes. And I also want to shout out Giuliano Valdi, who plays young Michael. And he's terrific. He has young Michael down to a science. His moves, his mannerisms, his voice. And while all this is going on, we meet Uncanny Valley Bubbles. And for the record, I'm not against using a CGI monkey. But when it's blatantly noticeable CGI, something is wrong. I mean, it looks like, have you ever heard of Bonzi from the 90s? That's how Uncanny Valley Bubbles looked. And granted, we could talk about how he didn't get Bubbles till 1985. They just wanted a wacky sitcom moment after we're seeing Joe Jackson beat the shit out of the Jackson kids. And it's treated like a scene in the sitcom where you hear a laugh track in your head as it's going on. It's like, oh, that Michael. And when the moment the truck pulled up, I said, it's Bubbles. And that's a major problem I have with this movie. The beats in this film are so goddamn predictable. And then you cut to them in the studio. Before a sound is heard, you know that Quincy Jones is about to tee up Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. And sure enough, Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson lay down Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. And he's still touring with the Jacksons because Joe Jackson told him, yeah, you can record a solo album, but the Jacksons are your top priority. And the best parts of this are when Michael Jackson's music is played. But at the same time, you could put a Michael Jackson soundtrack over Lady Ballers and it would be watchable. It would still suck, but it would be watchable. But there's a really good scene where he is with his head of security and he expresses his concerns about wanting to go solo. And it's kind of set up like this sitcom scene as well, where Michael says, and admittedly, this was pretty funny. He's like, I'm gonna go stand up to my dad. Hard cut to two lawyers. They might as well be the stereotypical Jewish guys from Walk Hard. And then while this is all going on, Michael Jackson seeks out John Branca. Gotta say, John, aim higher, because Miles Teller is dull as fuck in this role. This should have been someone like Kieran Culkin, or even Lewis Pullman or Greg Powell if you're going the Top Gun Maverick route. The scene is edited like the manager meeting scene from Bohemian Rhapsody, where we quick cut to each member of Queen for a simple conversation. Because Brian May and Roger Taylor had tickets for Queen and Adam Lambert to sell, damn it. And then Michael Jackson asks to fire his dad, and John does so by fax. And again, we're speed running off the wall to get to Thriller. Now we are in 1981. We get the montage of Michael Jackson making Thriller with clips of him watching The Fly, the cheesy Vincent Price one, and A House of Wax, the good Vincent Price one without Paris Hilton. And we have an album title. And I love how they're shooting the Thriller video and they really bury the lead that John Landis directed this. And goddamn, I really don't mean to keep hammering the Bohemian Rhapsody comparisons, but Mike Myers is essentially playing his character from Bohemian Rhapsody to talk about, we can't play your videos on MTV, baby, yeah! To Michael Jackson and John Branca, who, mind you, is a credited producer on this film, except Mike Myers is playing a real guy, Walter Yetnikoff, the head of CBS Records. The scene worked in Bohemian Rhapsody because he was playing a composite character, and it's a tip of the hat to Wayne's World, which Mike Myers famously told Lorne Michaels to fuck off with a suggestion of a Guns N' Roses song because Bohemian Rhapsody had personal ties to Mike Myers, just like how Thriller has personal ties to my life. Yetnikoff was not sitting in the cuck chair across from Michael Jackson and John Branca. This guy was a fucking badass in real life. Yetnikoff threatened people to give Billy Joel's publishing rights for Billy Joel's birthday. Yetnikoff was the guy who threatened to pull all the videos of CBS Records affiliated artists if they don't play the Billie Jean video. And the scene treats it like Michael Jackson asking him kindly, when in real life, Yetnikoff did that shit on his own. And even then, Billie Jean wasn't the first music video on MTV by a black artist, like the film kind of makes it out to be. But it opened the floodgates for black artists as they were hardcore criticized at the time for rarely playing black artists, namely David Bowie on their home turf.
To me, having watched MTV over the last few months, that it's a solid enterprise with it, and it's got a lot going for it. I'm just floored by the fact that there's so few black artists featured on it. Why is that?
I think that we're trying to move in that direction. We want to play artists that seem to be doing music that fits into what we want to play for MTV. The company is thinking in terms of narrow casting.
That's evident.
Then we get the scene of Michael Jackson shopping in a toy store with his head of security. And he's standing there signing things for children, because we still gotta make him a saint to sell tickets. We get this clip of Michael Jackson watching the news about the Bloods and the Crips. And we see them doing the choreography for the Beat It video, though the piano shirt is only in the opening scene of the video. And while it was true he was able to get the Bloods and Crips to put aside their differences for the Beat It music video, the film treats it like he single-handedly ended the feud between the Bloods and the Crips. We fast forward to the Motown 25 performance of Billie Jean, and it's a great recreation. It's well done, it's well made. Jafar had it down to a science. And that's the problem I have with this. He does a great job recreating Michael Jackson. But where is the real Michael Joseph Jackson in the script? If Jafar Jackson was given a better script, this would be his Oscar clip. And then we cut to 1984 as Joe Jackson and Don King are having an evil capitalist villain meeting. Joe Jackson wants to capitalize on Thriller, so he pimps out the Jacksons with Michael Jackson front and center. And Don King offers him Pepsi as a sponsor on the condition Michael joins the Jacksons. Joe Jackson says he can get Michael. And then we cut to the ill-fated Pepsi commercial where Michael Jackson's hair catches fire. Jackson then takes Demerol for his pain in a very you don't want no part of this shit scene, as that was one of the painkillers he took throughout his life in real life. And then he's depicted as the saintliest man to ever saint while he is in the hospital. He donates the Pepsi settlement to the hospital burn ward, and then Michael does the tour. And Joe is excitedly telling Don King they're going to tour the world. And While this is happening, they're playing Working Day and Night, which is the closest thing to a deep cut in this film. That gets to another point. I would have loved to have heard more deep cuts in this movie. I would have loved to have heard his cover of Got to Be There from when he was a child. I would have loved to have heard Baby Be Mine, the most underrated song on Thriller. But I'll give credit where credit is due by throwing someone a deep cut. While the Jacksons are performing Working Day and Night, Joe is excitedly telling Don King they're going to take this on a world tour. But if you pull out the actual performance, it's a medley of Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Shake Your Body Down to the Ground that Michael announces he's done. And in the film, it's Working Day and Night where he announces he's done with the Jacksons. And this is where I feel Michael as a whole, if you're going to do the Cradle to Grave Walk Hard biopic, could have worked. You needed to include 1985 in this. If you couldn't include the Chandlers, you should have included 1985 because 1, that's the year he actually gets Bubbles. 2, that's the year he buys the Beatles catalog. 3, that's the year where there's a major target on his fucking back. Because this movie is all rise. Everything Michael Jackson does is like the pitch me in YouTube videos. Super easy, barely an inconvenience. The child abuse is paid lip service, but they kind of speed run that. And then we go to 1988, where Michael Jackson is standing at Wembley Stadium thinking about his life as he's about to perform at Wembley Stadium. And then he comes out and performs bad. Jafar Jackson kills it. The energy is electric in that crowd. And then we get the His Story Continues title card at the end. Michael is one of the most frustrating movies I've seen this year. Because I see the good movie in here. I see the vision. Antoine Fuqua was not sleepwalking through this. He came from a music video background. So he knows what's expected to recreate, like the iconic Thriller video or the iconic Motown 25 performance of Billie Jean. He knows how important this film is. And for the most part, it's a well-made movie. Jafar Jackson's excellent in it, as is Coleman Domingo, Neil Long, and Lorenz Tate. They're all excellent. Those 4 are giving this their all. But I'm just so sick and tired of getting these Cradle to Grave biopics. And I'm not saying stop making Cradle to Grave biopics, but there's a way you can do them. Ray, for example, is a prime example of a Cradle to Grave biopic. Jamie Foxx delivers his all on that. Once a Kino Lorber sale hits, I'm going to buy the Ray 4K because that is a fantastic movie. And granted, these 2 are alive, but they're still Cradle to Grave biopics. Rocket Man by Elton John and Better Man are fantastic takes on the music biopic, as they approach both of these films as musicals. Better Man has Robbie Williams as an anthropomorphic talking monkey, and nobody questions it. But sadly, those films tanked, because nobody knows who Robbie Williams is, aside from maybe Angels, which is one of my all-time favorite songs. And when they perform that song during his grandma's death, that is a gut-wrenching scene. I'm just getting tired of biopics just being extremely formulaic. I'm tired of seeing my favorite musical artist stand very still and think about his life at a major show that's about to take place, and then we hard cut to his childhood. And as for my star rating, I wanted to give this a 2 out of 5 so bad. I ended up giving it a 1.5 because it follows the Walk Hard formula to a T. This is more of a Walk Hard biopic than Bohemian Rhapsody, because even then, Bohemian Rhapsody showed a fall. Bohemian Rhapsody showed us Freddie Mercury being diagnosed with AIDS. Granted, it wasn't before Live Aid. They just embellished for dramatic purposes. And yeah, I have my issues with Bohemian Rhapsody too, but Michael should have been brilliant. What I saw was a Wikipedia entry set to a greatest hits soundtrack. Those are the biopics I hate. I don't know how they're going to approach Michael Part 2, because if Michael Part 1 is all rise, Michael Part 2 is going to be all fall. And you can't exactly scrub away 2005. You can't exactly scrub away Michael dangling blanket off of a balcony. And you can't scrub away his painkiller addiction. You can't scrub away the fact that he spent fuck tons of money on his last album only for it to tank because of his battle with Sony Music. There's a lot of landmines you gotta go through for Michael Part 2. And I'm hoping Michael Part 2 is good, if there is going to be a Michael Part 2. I'd like some insight into who these people are. I have Wikipedia. I can just read Wikipedia. I could just put on a playlist of Michael Jackson's music videos while reading said Wikipedia page. With Michael, Jafar Jackson is giving it an A-plus performance to this first draft biopic on an iconic figure's life. I kind of grade music biopics on a curve because my first love is music. I love music. I love movies. I love music and movies put together. I love music biopics. I've said this once, and I've said it 1,000 times. And I'm going to close with this. Walk Hard is a spoof, not a blueprint. Be sure to like, comment, share, spread the word of New Realms Media. Follow me on all my socials at New Realms Media. And until then, Laughter House, I love to laugh. Whoo, boy, I have a roast in the oven for that piece of shit.